about 1968.
Okay.
And I can't tell you there's Billy Warehane there, Ron Pierce, Norm Cameron, Tom Anderson, and I can't remember, there's Bright Eyes. I can't remember who all those guys were. It's been too many years.
All righty. Do you want to give us your name?
My name, Jim Phillips.
And when were you born?
June the 8th, 1943.
All right. And are you aware that you're being video recorded right now?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I had to go get the extension cord so that I could...
All right. So, where were you born?
I was born in St. Ignatius, in the hospital in St. Ignatius. St. Ignatius is a small town. I suppose there's maybe 800 people that are there between Missoula and Kalispell, the Mission Valley.
And what was your family doing up there?
My dad was raised near there on near Post Creek, and my mother was raised. Started off in Pablo and then Ronan, and after they were married, World War II happened, and then after the war, then they moved to Ronan and they started a business, and that was the only hospital at that time, but they were located in that area. So that's, if you were gonna, that was back in the day where women had to go to the hospital and, they stayed a week afterwards to recover. Yeah. Now they stay about 2 hours and then they kick them out.
So you were raised entirely up there at St. Ignatius?
Well, Ronan.
Ronan?
Yeah.
So you went to high school there too?
High school there, graduated in 1961. And there were about 55 kids in that class, but in that class was Chuck Lockwood. Chuck became a jumper. Ron McCrae became a jumper. Nels Jensen, he became a jumper. Homer Corville was in that class. He became a jumper. And me.
So why was that? Why were there so many jumpers out of that class?
I don't know. I can't answer that. You'd have to ask them all individually. I mean, it occurred to me it was a good job, but I'd been in the military and I was enrolled at the University of Montana before I applied to the jumper program, and these guys all had different avenues to how they, got into the program. I know Chuck Lockwood was married and had about 3 kids and was working in a sawmill up at Pablo, and he looked around and he saw Homer and Nelson and then me, and we were in the jumper program, and he started, dragging his lip, and his wife Carol said, well, if that's something that you want to do, go do it. So he quit his job and did it.
Well, when did you first get exposed to the outdoors?
Oh, come on!
No.
I mean, I grew up in the Mission Valley. I mean,
so what kind of
back before there were video games and.
So what kind of things would you do growing up?
Oh, well, my cousins ran a little trap line, and I would go with them trapping.
They were older than you?
And I had a horse, and Nels Jensen had a horse, and he and I would go, they were older than me. And Nels and I would go horseback riding, and there were little gangs that we had, groups of fellows, and we would go out to the woods and build forts, and then we would go fishing, and we would go exploring in the Mission Mountains, and, it was just part of it. I still remember, I guess it was maybe my 12th birthday, there was one long, narrow box remaining under the Christmas tree that my dad was real anxious for me to open, and it was a 20-gauge shotgun. Well, I had it made, and I could go duck hunting, I could go pheasant hunting, and that's what I did. You know?
Well, when did you have your first experience on fires?
How did that come about? It would have been about 1964. It would have been the summer of 1964, and I was working for my dad in the service station. And crew boss from one of the Tom McDonald was crew boss for one of the native crews that was up there, and he was trying to pull together a crew because there was a fire down on the bison range, and he had some openings, slots, and he stopped in to buy some gas from my dad, and it was explaining that he could use some help, and said, well, how about I hire your kid? Yeah, I said, well, you better ask him. He said, sure, I'll go.
So you were 3 years out of high school by then?
Yeah, I'd been in the military and discharged by that time. Yeah.
Well, what had you been doing in the military?
I started off in the Navy, and they sent me to Hospital Corpsman down in San Diego. So I learned about field medicine, and when about graduation time, they asked where you wanted to be stationed. And one of the items on the list of possible places was something called FMF, and I didn't know what it was. I was just filling in blanks, and I checked it. Turned out that there was something called the Fleet Marine Force, and so apparently there's not too many hospitalmen that really opted for the Fleet Marine Force, but since I did, I got it. And they sent me to the 4th Marines, which was it's the old China Marine outfit. They'd been stationed in Shanghai back in the day, and when they came stateside, then they wound up in Oahu, over in Kaneohe Bay, and that's where I wound up with the 4th Marines. And this was pre-Vietnam, so, but they anticipated problems that were going there, and they'd been sending some advisors, so we were on a constant kind of alert where we would do mount out situations and get ready to go to war. And one we thought was just a training exercise, and we we boarded ship. We headed out into the Molokai Channel, and the sun came up on one side of the ship. The next morning when after a day, and the next morning I woke up, the sun was coming up on the same side, on a different side of the ship. And I said, what happened? He said, we turned around. I said, well, where are we going? So we're going to Panama Canal. And I said, how come? Well, they got something there called the Bay of Pigs, and we're going to go down there, maybe. And it was a real interesting time to be aboard that ship, because the old hands, the guys that had been in Korea, and some of the World War II vets were in there, and things got real serious, and they started teaching us different techniques and things that we wanted to do for self-protection. We started filing the front of our steel helmets. I don't know if they can do that with the Kevlar anymore, but the old steel pots, we sharpened the front edge of them and the back edge of them, so that if somebody attacked us from the front in a hand-to-hand combat situation, we could just throw that head down, and that would act like a blade, like a knife, and it would just slice off their nose. And the same in the back. Sharpen our belt buckles so that would become a thing. We'd take pieces of steel with files and insert it in the toe of your boots, so that you had maybe an inch or an inch and a half sticking out, but a triangular shape and just sharp as a razor. So if you had to kick anybody, you'd do a lot of damage. Things like that, and then they started issuing us sheets, laminated sheets of paper with the last rites on them, so that we could give last rites to somebody that was dying. Issued us morphine, and it was just a strange time. Then we had to turn it all around, turn it back after the fiasco.
Well, you were still in when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened then.
Yeah.